There are many hundreds of ruined churches in England and Wales, and people often wonder what it was that made them become a ruin. I suppose the most common theory is that these were churches used by those who were killed in the Black Death. But actually, the vast majority of reasons for a church to be ruined are for more practical purposes. In many instances, churches became neglected and abandoned because they lost their congregation. Sometimes they moved away to be in a more convenient location, or they could have been forcibly moved, and that's exactly what happened here at Eastwell in Kent, where in the late Middle Ages the estate owner, the Moyle family, decided to create a deer park. They moved the village away, but the church remained in use. In fact, it remained in use until the Second World War, when the parkland was requisitioned by the army. The church was out of bounds, it wasn't properly maintained, and eventually, in 1951, this led to the collapse of its roof. Luckily, the important monuments that the church had contained were taken to the Victoria and Albert Museum, where you can see them today. But it was decided not to rebuild the church. Even in its ruined state, this church still gets a lot of visitors, partly because of its lovely location next to a 40-acre lake, but also because it's reputed to be the burial place of Richard Plantagenet, illegitimate son of King Richard III. The story goes that in 1485, a young man who had been privately educated and who didn't know his parents was taken to an army encampment, and there he was introduced to the king, King Richard III. The king told the young boy that he was his father, and that should anything happen to him, he should flee for his life. Well, the following day saw the Battle of Bosworth, and the young boy fled to Kent, where he worked here at Eastwell as a stonemason. Over the following 40 years, he became friendly with the owner of the estate, Sir Thomas Moyle, and eventually trusted him enough to tell him his story. Sir Thomas was so pleased that he gave Richard a house and a pension so that he didn't have to work another day. It's an interesting story, but how much evidence is there to support the fact that Richard was really the illegitimate son of Richard III? The answer is absolutely none at all. But there is some evidence at the end of our story, because the burial registers here in this church for December 1550 record that one Richard Plantagenet was buried. Now, nobody in 1550 would have been calling themselves Plantagenet. The Tudors were still rather insecure on their throne, and any Plantagenet was viewed with suspicion. Of course, our Richard was dead, and I suppose it didn't matter too much if his name was put into the register. But it's fascinating to come here and wonder if this story of the young man coming all the way from that battlefield in Bosworth is true. Throughout its later history, the tomb of Richard was shown to visitors to the church, but nobody knew exactly where it was. After the church became a ruin, this table tomb was erected to mark the supposed site of his grave. Since 1980, the ruins have been in the care of the Friends of Friendless Churches.